What if I told you that the most magnetic and attractive people aren't those who talk the most, but those who've mastered the art of strategic silence? Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor of Rome, practiced 8 daily habits that made him irresistibly charismatic without ever needing to be the center of attention. 2,000 years later, neuroscience has proven that these same principles activate the social attraction centers in the human brain. And today, you'll discover how this ancient wisdom can completely transform your social presence in just 7 days of practice. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment which part of the world you're watching from, relax and get comfortable. Let's begin. Have you ever noticed how the most captivating people in a room often say the least? There's something about those individuals who can hold back, watch, and let quiet hang in the air that makes everyone want to listen when they finally do speak. This isn't magic or luck, it's the power of strategic silence. When you start paying attention to those who use silence as part of their daily life, you'll recognize a subtle but strong kind of leadership that doesn't rely on dominating conversations. A person who deploys silence intentionally communicates authority, confidence, and can shift the entire mood of a social setting just by being deliberate about when they speak and when they choose not to. It's an overlooked tactic that both ancient wisdom and modern science recognize as a key to presence and charisma. The idea of strategic silence has deep roots stretching back to thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher. He believed real wisdom comes from what you notice in quiet, not just from what you say. When you're silent on purpose, you give yourself space to observe. You pick up on things others miss, the energy of the room, subtle glances, or hints in conversation. People tend to overlook this because many of us are conditioned to fill any quiet moment with words, thinking it proves our value. However, consciously letting a conversation breathe can actually make every word you do speak land with more impact. In a social gathering, at work, or even among friends, there's usually at least one person who isn't talking too much, but still seems to draw everyone's interest, instead of rushing to answer every question or always having a story to throw in. These individuals are comfortable with pauses. They don't view silence as awkward or something to avoid. Instead, they let it serve as space for thought, for letting ideas sink in, or for showing they're considering what was just said. Over time, this small act of patience sets them apart from the crowd. Everyone wants to be heard, but few realize that sometimes the most powerful way to command attention is to hold back. Neuroscience supports what old philosophers have been saying for centuries. Silence changes the way people respond to you. When you maintain a pause instead of answering right away, it triggers a kind of tension in our brains. The silence gives people a chance to reflect on the conversation, and it often leads them to pay more attention to you, not less. In practical terms, this means if you're at a meeting and someone asks your opinion, waiting a few moments before you answer tells everyone you're thoughtful. Even a couple of extra seconds feels longer in a group setting and signals that you take your words seriously. On top of this, studies show that silence in conversation naturally draws respect. The person who can withstand that pause without racing to fill it with words appears more grounded and confident, qualities that others instinctively respect. It's easy to want to fill the silence because it sometimes feels like pressure. Nobody enjoys that moment when a conversation stalls and everyone looks around. However, leaning into that silence can shift not only how people see you, but also how much control you have over the interactions. In professional settings in particular, being intentional about letting others speak first or not feeling rushed to reply gives you room to really think through what you want to say and how to say it. You avoid those impulsive slip-ups or thoughtless comments that can come back to haunt you later. In person, on a call, or even over email, taking a moment to pause before responding can be the difference between a knee-jerk reaction and a genuinely thoughtful contribution. In more personal situations, such as among friends or family, being comfortable with quiet moments means you give people space to share more openly with you. Everyone secretly dislikes the kind of person who jumps in as soon as there's a moment's lapse, turning every conversation into a monologue. The most compelling conversationalists are those who leave a little space, a beat or two, before offering their thoughts. This patience shows respect, not just for the other person's story, but also for the idea that not everything needs an immediate response. If you try it, you'll notice that others become more candid, more likely to express themselves honestly, and conversations take on a deeper rhythm. An important benefit of strategic silence is how it lets you avoid saying things you might regret. So many misunderstandings or conflicts happen because someone feels pressured to reply instantly without thinking. When you intentionally pause, you buy yourself time. You can weigh your words, consider the effect of your response, or even decide it's better to say nothing at all. The restraint you show by not reacting immediately often saves you from escalating tensions or getting drawn into pointless arguments. It's almost like putting a filter on your own thoughts, letting through only what is truly worthy of being shared. People who master the use of silence quickly discover that their words carry more weight. If you're the person who always has something to say, others may start to tune you out, even if your insights are valuable. On the other hand, if you're typically quiet but speak up at key moments, people start to pay closer attention. There's an old saying that seems to capture this. When a quiet person talks, everyone listens. This effect isn't accidental. By choosing your moments and letting others fill the air, you create scarcity, and scarcity draws value. Over time, this habit builds trust. It tells people you're not impulsive, and that when you do weigh in, it's worth hearing. Confidence is another major element of strategic silence. Being comfortable with not immediately responding in a conversation or letting a bit of quiet hang in the air sends a powerful unspoken signal. Most people break silence because they're nervous or worried about how they're being perceived. But someone who's fine with that gap gets viewed as secure in themselves. This kind of self-assuredness is instantly attractive. It makes people curious about what you think, rather than just waiting for their turn to talk again. It's the opposite of trying too hard, and the beauty of it is how natural it feels once you give yourself permission to try. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to sit with silence confidently instead of rushing to fill it. There's also a hidden social dynamic at play when you use silence intentionally. Many conversations are like a dance for control. Who's leading? Who's following? Who gets the last word? By being strategic about when you speak, you subtly shift this balance in your favor without ever appearing domineering. For example, at work, simply waiting a beat before responding to a proposal can make the other side wonder what you're thinking, giving you a psychological edge. In casual environments, if a story is being told and everyone is pitching in, being slow to respond or just listening can make others curious about your opinion, building anticipation. People naturally fill in the silence with their assumptions, and if you stay quiet, they often attribute to you a sense of depth and insight, whether or not you've said anything yet. The challenge, of course, is learning to differentiate between the kind of silence that feels awkward and the kind that feels deliberate and thoughtful. Strategic silence isn't about withdrawing or being passive-aggressive. It's not about refusing to talk or stonewalling people. Instead, it's about giving your interactions a sense of rhythm, knowing when to step forward verbally and when to step back. It takes some self-awareness and practice to feel this out, because it's easy to tip from comfortable quiet to coming off as aloof. The key is always intention. You're silent not to avoid, but to heighten the value of what you do share and to create more space for the people around you. In the digital age, where group chats, online meetings, and even constant phone notifications keep us in near constant communication, strategic silence becomes even more valuable. You don't have to reply to every message instantly. Waiting can command respect, showing that you're deliberate about your attention and that you value your own time. Similarly, giving yourself a pause before responding to emails or messages lets you respond with clarity. When everyone is rushing, slowing down makes you stand out for all the right reasons. Even outside of speech, your nonverbal presence can use silence to your benefit. Sitting calmly, making eye contact, or simply being attentive can speak louder than any words. A person who radiates calm and listens tends to be noticed, remembered, and even admired. It's easy to overlook the quiet power in simply watching and waiting, but it's what allows you to notice more, reflect more, and choose your actions with care. Strategic silence also connects with emotional self-control. Reacting to something you don't like or disagree with by blurting out the first thought that comes to mind rarely ends well. But the choice to pause lets the initial wave of emotion pass. Maybe someone says something that irritates you at work, or a friend makes a comment you disagree with. Instead of firing back, you sit with the moment for a bit. Sometimes you realize it's not even worth responding, or you see a better way to approach the issue calmly. This skill can make all the difference between being seen as impulsive or as steady and rational. The way you practice strategic silence isn't about suppressing yourself, but about choosing your moments for maximum effect. It works at all ages and stages of life. In school, letting a teacher's question sit for a moment before answering can set you apart as reflective. In presentations, pausing before making your point gives your words more impact and makes your audience lean in. Even in negotiations or arguments, the person who is less rattled and less desperate to fill space often has the upper hand. This isn't something that needs years of training to develop. A bit of patience and awareness goes a long way. Some may worry that using silence will make them seem passive or uninterested, but that only happens if you use it as a wall instead of a window. Pairing silence with open body language, like nodding, smiling, and showing you're listening, transforms it into an active part of the conversation. The contrast between your engaged expressions and your patient pauses sends the message you're present and thinking, not just zoning out. This is especially true in friendships and relationships, where being a good listener often means a lot more than always having the last word. A powerful side effect is how this habit helps you handle pressure or intense situations. If a conversation gets heated, or if someone asks a difficult question, the instinct might be to defend yourself quickly. Taking a pause, even if it's just for a few moments, lets you regain your composure. It signals to others that you're not easily rattled and that you value a careful response over an emotional reaction. Over time, people associate you with level-headedness, which makes them more likely to trust your judgment and seek your input. The beauty of strategic silence is how accessible it is. You don't need special training, status, or charisma. You just need to get comfortable with letting things breathe. Start by allowing a little more quiet in your daily conversations. Notice the urge to jump in and let it pass. Watch the effect it has on those around you. You might find that people talk more freely, share more openly, and pay more attention when you finally decide it's your turn to weigh in. Consistent practice is what makes strategic silence second nature. Over time, you stop feeling nervous about the gaps and start to enjoy the extra space to think. This comfort shows through to others, boosting your social currency and even improving your self-awareness. Instead of worrying about saying the right thing all the time, you come to appreciate listening, observing, and acting with greater purpose. It's a subtle change, but it reshapes how people see you and how you handle your own thoughts and emotions. So the next time you're in a situation where you feel pressure to fill the silence, try letting that moment linger. Look around, listen, and notice what's really happening. You'll start to see that silence, used intentionally, is its own kind of strength, a form of presence that few people truly master but everyone respects. It doesn't require you to change who you are or to pretend. It just asks for patience, confidence, and a willingness to let your words be rare and meaningful rather than constant and overlooked. The rewards for your relationships and your peace of mind are well worth the effort. When you start to get comfortable with those quieter moments in conversations, a natural next step is actually paying close attention to what the other person is saying. Many people think they are good listeners, but very few really are. The kind of listening that stands out, what you might call active listening, takes genuine effort and can completely change the way people feel around you. Most folks are so used to waiting for their turn to speak or thinking about what they're going to say next that they miss a lot of what's actually being communicated, both through words and through the tone or the little details people reveal when they feel someone is truly paying attention. People pick up on when you're really listening and when you're not. This becomes clear in lots of situations. Think about a co-worker coming to you with an idea. If you're nodding along without looking up from your phone or you're distracted by nearby conversations, they'll notice, even if they don't say anything. On the other hand, someone who puts their phone down, makes eye contact, and asks questions feels incredibly rare nowadays. When you're doing that, giving people undivided attention, it sends a super strong signal that you respect them. You don't need to agree with what's being said to make someone feel valued. Just giving your focus to another person is enough to make most people open up and naturally want to keep talking with you, which is actually a gateway to building real charisma. This isn't just something that feels good on the surface. There's biology at work here too. Science has found that really listening with attention and empathy boosts oxytocin in both the listener and the speaker. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, is involved in trust building and making people feel safe. That's why, after an honest conversation where you felt heard, you often leave feeling closer to the other person. And it's not just about emotional topics. Even ordinary day-to-day interactions are affected by whether you seem genuinely present. A simple thing like listening patiently instead of interrupting has a bigger social impact than many realize. When you show up in a conversation ready to listen, a few things set you apart. One is eye contact. That doesn't mean staring someone down, but just looking at them enough to show you're engaged. Another is little cues, like nodding at the right moments or giving small, honest reactions with your face. A huge part is not jumping in as soon as you think of something to say. Letting people finish their thought, even if they pause, is rare and noticeable. And then there's following up with something they said instead of changing the topic to yourself. It sounds simple, but a lot of people do the exact opposite. They steer every subject back to their own stories or experiences, which ends up being a massive turnoff. Active listening also means checking to make sure you've understood. Asking for clarification or summarizing what you just heard shows that you care about actually getting their point. For example, saying something like, "So what you're saying is," or repeating their main idea in your own words invites them to clarify or expand. It clears up misunderstandings fast and reassures the other person that you're genuinely interested in their point of view. People appreciate others who make this effort, and it's remembered long after the conversation is over. It's worth mentioning that listening as a skill has little to do with being introverted or extroverted. Anyone can be a good listener if they decide to be. What stops most people is impatience, or the urge to make themselves the center of attention. But the reward for holding back and hearing someone else out is huge. Most people seldom feel truly listened to, so providing that feeling makes you memorable and trustworthy. That can shift the dynamic in a job interview, in meeting new people, or even in long-term relationships where listening sometimes gets neglected because you assume you already know what the other person will say. In group settings, great listeners have a kind of invisible influence. In meetings or team discussions, for example, the person who's most attentive often becomes the go-to for advice or perspective. They remember the small things that others miss, and they tend to ask follow-up questions that push the conversation forward in a thoughtful way. In day-to-day life, when someone's a good listener, it shows up in surprising ways, remembering details, noticing changes in mood, or catching on to subtle shifts in plans or priorities. This kind of attention is a form of social currency that pays off over and over. There's an additional layer to listening, what's called reflective listening. It's not just hearing the words, but picking up on feelings that might not be directly stated. Someone might say they're fine, but really mean they're struggling. A great listener catches that, maybe by asking, "Are you sure you're okay? You don't seem like yourself." Of course, it's important not to press too hard or get nosy, but small signs that you care make a big difference and usually lead people to open up more if they want to share. This is especially important when talking with kids, older adults, or anyone who might not directly spell out how they're feeling or what they want to say. You might notice that some friends or colleagues seem extremely popular, even though they aren't always talking or cracking jokes. Often, it's because they know how to listen well. They let others have the space to express themselves, and they don't rush to judge or dismiss what's being said. That sense of being heard is powerful. People associate good feelings with those who make them feel seen and understood. Sometimes all it takes for a person to view you as charismatic is for you to remember a little detail they mentioned days or weeks before, because it proves you were paying attention. Attention spans in the modern world are getting shorter, thanks in part to social media and constant distractions. So, when someone genuinely listens, it feels almost like a breath of fresh air. It's gotten to the point where people notice, even after just a few minutes, if you're checking your phone or looking around. Being present, even for just a short conversation, is rare, and it means a lot. It says, "You're worth my time right now." This simple act has the effect of leaving a lasting impression on everyone you interact with. There are times when being a good listener means you hear things that are difficult or even uncomfortable. People may vent or confess things that make you unsure of what to say. In those moments, remember that you don't always have to fix the problem or give advice. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is just listen, nod, and let them know you're there. That's often enough. Later, if you have something helpful to offer, you can do that. But the first step is just being present and open to what they want to share. This attitude removes a lot of pressure from conversations and helps both sides feel more at ease. Even in disagreements, listening is huge. When people argue, each side usually wants to talk over the other, but nothing actually gets resolved. If you're able to slow things down, ask questions, and repeat what you're hearing, it changes the tone of the whole discussion. People are much more likely to calm down and listen to your side if they see you giving them that basic respect first. In the long run, this way of handling arguments leads to stronger relationships, simply by making people feel like they matter. Building the habit of listening more actively takes some practice. For starters, it means forcing yourself to stop interrupting, even if you're excited or feel like you know what they're going to say. Also, put away distractions when you're talking to someone, phones, computers, or anything that pulls your focus away from the person in front of you. It might feel a little awkward at first, but people notice these small behaviors right away. Over time, these small habits actually become second nature. It's also helpful if you get used to asking open-ended questions instead of just yes or no ones. Questions that start with how, what, or tell me more about. Open the door for real conversation and let the other person share more than just surface-level details. These questions make it clear you're not trying to control the conversation, but actually want to hear what's important to them. Even if you don't agree with everything, being curious and patient is far more powerful than trying to win people over with endless talking. Not all listening is the same. There's the kind of fake listening where someone looks like they're paying attention, but you can tell they're not really there. Their eyes wander, or they don't react to anything being said. Then there's deep listening, where you almost forget about yourself for a while and just take in what somebody else is sharing. It's not about being silent. It's about participating in the conversation in a way that's all about making the other person feel valued. This is what turns work acquaintances into real friends, and what helps family members feel supported even when life gets busy or messy. Over time, consistently showing up as a good listener builds a reputation. People will start to come to you more, ask for your feedback, or just want to spend time with you. That's not just about being nice. It's about trust. Others know you won't gossip or twist their words, that you'll give their stories or worries real attention. That's how real bonds are formed, and it can't be faked. The few who develop this skill are always in demand, whether in personal circles or professional scenes. Of course, listening doesn't mean letting everyone dump their problems on you all the time. Boundaries are important. You can still be a great listener while having your own needs and limits. If a conversation starts to drain you or take a direction that's not good for you, it's okay to guide things back to safer waters or to let someone know you need to change the subject. Listening is about being present, not about losing yourself in everyone else's drama. One neat thing about making active listening a habit is how it changes your own perspective. When you listen to different people's experiences and viewpoints, even ones you disagree with, your world gets bigger and more nuanced. You not only learn new things, but you also develop more empathy, which is something everyone could use more of. That doesn't mean you have to change your values or agree with everything. It just means you better understand where people are coming from. Often, the simple act of listening helps diffuse negative assumptions or heated situations long before things can get out of hand. Kids and teenagers, in particular, are skilled at sensing who listens to them and who doesn't. If you're dealing with young people, this skill is invaluable. A child or teen who feels heard grows up more secure, more likely to share problems before they get too big, and more likely to develop listening skills themselves. On the flip side, adults who never felt listened to growing up can struggle to open up later. So this is a habit that has ripple effects far beyond individual conversations. It affects families, classrooms, and communities. Making eye contact, nodding occasionally, paraphrasing, and asking clarifying questions, these are all practical ways to get started if listening is something you want to get better at. At first, it might feel like you're acting, but after a while it becomes second nature. You'll start noticing how often people drift off or start self-promoting, and it'll motivate you to keep being different by just tuning in. People won't always remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel, and being truly listened to leaves a positive mark that lasts for a long time. There's sometimes a temptation to try to solve every problem that comes your way in conversation. Advice might feel helpful, but the truth is, many people just need to vent or process out loud. Unless someone specifically asks for your input, it's fine to just listen, nod, and show support. Sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is just confirm you heard them. That sounds really tough, or I can see why you'd feel that way. This little bit of validation means more than a quick solution or an at least statement. Hearing "I get it" can be more soothing than even the most logical advice. Over time, you'll notice that good listening skills lead people to let their guard down. They'll reveal things about themselves, their goals, their worries, or their quirks. If you treat that information respectfully, it deepens your relationship. Sometimes, even after just a single honest conversation, people will look at you differently, like you're on their side, or at least that you respect them in a way not everyone does. It's a reputation that's built one conversation at a time. Listening also helps in those moments when you're meeting someone new, maybe at an event or a friend's dinner party, or even casually out and about. Instead of trying to impress with stories or jokes, you can focus on learning about the other person. Ask why they're interested in their work, what their weekend plans are, or something else open-ended. Letting the other person lead the direction of the conversation often makes them feel at ease and gives you interesting details for more questions. This does more for your likability than almost anything else you can do in the first few minutes of meeting someone. In work environments, listening helps you notice opportunities, risks, and creative ideas that less observant co-workers might miss. Often when people complain that their workplace is full of politics or drama, what's actually happening is a lack of active listening. If you're someone who can really understand colleagues, pick up on what your boss is worried about, or sense what your team is excited about, you become the person others rely on. It's almost like developing a kind of workplace radar, and it applies at every stage of your career, no matter if you've been somewhere for years or just a few days. There will be times when listening gets tiring, especially if you're dealing with tough topics or just having one of those days where your mind keeps wandering. No one is perfect at it all the time. The trick is to do your best, be honest if you're too tired to focus, and try again next time. Even 10 minutes of solid, engaged listening is more valuable than an hour of distracted conversation. Quality always beats quantity here. What you'll find, as you spend more time trying to be a really good listener, is that it doesn't just improve your relationships, but also how much you enjoy other people's company. Instead of every interaction being a competition for attention or a performance, it starts to feel more like a genuine exchange. This isn't just good for building charisma. It actually makes life feel a lot richer and more interesting. When people talk, they reveal hidden worlds, and getting to see those is a privilege that comes only to those who are patient enough to really listen. This skill might sound simple, but it can't be overstated how rare and powerful it is. In a noisy, distracted world, the person who stops and focuses, the one who asks real questions and listens for real answers, gets remembered, respected, and trusted. Step by step, it makes daily interactions easier, opens the door to deeper friendships and opportunities, and gives you insights about people you might never get otherwise. People are drawn to those who make them feel important and understood, and that's the kind of quiet charisma most of us are really looking for. Another thing that starts to become obvious, especially when you spend more time listening and really being present with other people, is just how much the way someone handles their own emotions impacts even the simplest interactions. It's one of those things that you might overlook if you're distracted or just moving too fast. But once you pay attention, you can spot composure a mile away. People who have that unshakable calm, whether things are going well or everything is falling apart around them, they really stand out. What's interesting is that keeping your cool isn't something you're just born with. For most people, it's a skill, and like any skill, it gets stronger with practice and time. When you start developing a habit of maintaining composure, it changes how you relate to other people and how they react to you. A lot of us know someone who seems totally steady, even when things get stressful. Maybe you've worked with a manager who never loses their temper during a busy shift, or a friend who is the rock of their group whenever drama pops up. It's not that these people don't feel angry, anxious, or caught off guard. They just have practiced ways to keep those emotions from running wild and taking over their choices. There's actually some good science behind why everyone responds so well to this kind of personality. People feel safer and more comfortable around someone who gives off steady, calm energy. It creates a kind of stability that's quietly attractive, especially in today's world where lots of situations can get tense or unpredictable very quickly. Staying cool under pressure is about emotional regulation. That basically just means noticing when you're getting worked up, anxious, or frustrated, and having ways to slow yourself down so you don't react automatically in a way you'll regret. It could be counting to 10 in your head before you respond, taking a slow breath, or reminding yourself that you don't need to have all the answers right away. When someone else gets upset, if you're able to keep a level head and not get swept up in their emotions, people notice. They usually start to mirror that energy. This is a pretty big deal in work environments, especially in jobs where customers or co-workers can be demanding. It's also useful in families, friendships, and even with strangers. There are a few simple things anyone can do to start building more composure. One is just becoming aware of the signs that you're getting rattled. For some people, it's a faster heartbeat, clenched jaw, or sweaty palms. For others, it's a rush to speak, or the urge to say something harsh. Catching yourself in those moments is half the work. The rest is pausing and choosing what you want to do next, rather than letting your first impulse take over. Even just saying, "Let me think for a second," out loud buys you time and space to come back to the situation with a clearer head. Another habit that helps is deep breathing. Sounds almost too simple, but it works. When you slow down your breathing, it sends a signal to your brain that the danger has passed and you can relax, even if it's just a heated debate or an annoying line at the store. If you watch people who seem naturally calm, you'll notice they rarely have quick, shallow breaths. It's a small physical habit that helps you deal with moments of frustration, anger, or embarrassment. And nobody else even has to know you're doing it. Mindfulness is another tool that a lot of unflappable people use, even if they wouldn't call it that. This just means paying attention to what's happening right now, not just what you're worried might happen in 5 minutes, or what annoyed you yesterday. When you train your mind to come back to the present, even just for a moment, you respond in a way that matches the situation, not your worst-case scenario. Over time, this makes your reactions feel more intentional. It lowers the chances of having a meltdown or causing a scene because you lost your cool for a split second. Reframing is also key. That means catching yourself when you're thinking about something in the most negative, stressful, or personal way, and trying to see it from another angle. So if someone snaps at you, instead of thinking, "They hate me," you might pause and remember, maybe they're having a rough day. This doesn't make you weak. In fact, people who can do this tend to handle stress way better than those who take everything to heart. It's not about denying feelings, but about keeping them from controlling you. It's really common to think that keeping your cool is about never showing emotions, but it doesn't work like that. Being composed isn't pretending not to care or bottling everything up. It's about showing your real feelings in a way that's controlled. A calm person will still let people know when they're upset or disappointed, but they do it in a way that's clear and steady, not explosive. This is the kind of honesty that builds trust because others know where they stand, but they don't have to worry about sudden blow-ups. There's a huge advantage to composure that goes beyond just looking good in public or at work. It deeply affects your relationships too. When people see you as someone who won't go off the rails when things get tough, they feel safe coming to you with problems, feedback, or even bad news. They know you won't make a scene or start pointing fingers. Instead, you'll hear them out, think about it, and respond with respect. Over the long haul, that means people will be more honest with you, and you'll have stronger connections because there's less fear of conflict. Calm people naturally attract trust. In professional life, if a leader always flies off the handle or panics in a crisis, team members start to hide mistakes or avoid bringing up concerns. The opposite is true for leaders with composure. Teams run smoother, and people feel empowered to share new ideas or problems without fear. The workplace is less stressful, and everyone becomes more productive. It's the same in families. Parents who don't lose their temper but explain calmly tend to have kids who feel safer and more willing to talk about tough stuff. Learning to stay calm doesn't mean never making mistakes. Everyone has moments where emotions get the better of them. What matters is how you respond afterwards. People with composure apologize when needed and move on. They don't dwell on it or spiral into shame. This sets a good example for everyone around them that it's okay to mess up as long as you admit it and try to handle things better next time. Reacting instead of responding is probably the most common way people lose composure. It happens in all types of situations: an insult at school, a rude customer at work, or a family member pushing your buttons. When you just snap back, you end up regretting what you've said or done. But when you make it a habit to pause, breathe, and respond instead of react, you take power over the moment. This is something that anyone can practice, one conversation at a time. It doesn't require meditation classes or expensive coaching, just the willingness to cultivate a bit of patience. One thing you notice with people who have mastered composure is how rarely they get drawn into pointless drama. They aren't the ones making scenes in public or fanning the flames of a small disagreement. Instead, they stay focused on what matters and don't let themselves get baited into arguments or gossip. That gives their opinions more weight. When they do speak or take action, people listen because it's obvious they're not acting out of panic or anger. Composure has a spillover effect into physical presence too. Calm people tend to move more slowly and confidently. They don't fidget or rush around. Their body language matches their attitude. They appear settled, comfortable in their own skin, and generally relaxed, even if things around them are chaotic. This kind of presence is noticeable without words. It gives others the sense that you're dependable and that they can count on you if something goes wrong. Even when things go really badly, a big mistake at work, a sudden change in plans, or a crisis at home, keeping your cool lets you see options that others might miss. Panic narrows your thinking. Calm broadens your view. When you're steady, you can step back and figure out what's actually possible instead of getting stuck or overwhelmed. And often, while everyone else is stressing out or playing the blame game, calm people are already working on a solution. There are a lot of practical steps for improving composure day in and day out. Getting enough rest is basic, but you'd be surprised how much easier it is to lose your cool when you're running on too little sleep. Exercise also helps because it lets you vent stress physically. Staying hydrated and eating well give your body what it needs to support a steady mood. These things sound almost boring compared to flashy advice online, but they're the basics most steady people follow, whether they know it or not. Sometimes composure can look like staying quiet when everyone else is shouting. Other times, it's about calmly asking for a break if you're reaching your limit. It might mean choosing to walk away from a situation before you say or do something you'll regret. If you feel your patience running thin, admitting, "I'm not ready to talk about this calmly right now," is surprisingly effective at diffusing a potential issue. People respect honesty when it's paired with steadiness. You'll see composure show up in small moments every day, waiting in a slow line, getting cut off in traffic, or dealing with a schedule mix-up. You might catch a flash of frustration, but then you stop, reset, and move forward without making a scene. You save your energy for things that matter, instead of letting every little thing throw you off. The more you do it, the faster your reset button works. Another area where composure truly matters is in public speaking or high-stress performances. It's natural for nerves to show up, but people who are used to choosing their responses over their reactions don't let those nerves derail them. They focus on the task, breathe, and use whatever adrenaline they have to support their delivery instead of rushing or freezing. Over time, this composure in visible situations encourages people to trust your judgment and want to follow your lead. Composure is valuable in personal relationships too. Arguments with loved ones can get heated, But people who keep their voice steady and stick to the point help bring things back to a reasonable level more quickly. Being able to discuss an issue without raising your voice or using hurtful words is a real mark of maturity, and partners or friends will notice. It sets the tone for more honest and productive communication and reduces the number of fights that spiral out of control. It also means handling criticism without taking it personally or lashing out. Few people enjoy getting negative feedback, but those who can nod, listen, and say, "Thanks for letting me know," are better off in the long run. It doesn't mean you have to agree with every critique, only that you don't let it rattle you. When others see this, they're more likely to trust you with bigger responsibilities and more complex conversations. Composure isn't about being cold or detached. It's about steady warmth, a kind of quiet confidence that tells people you can be counted on no matter what. That quality draws others in because everyone is searching for a sense of security in their connections. Having a friend, co-worker, or leader who's unshakable when things get tough is a comfort to everyone around them. Let's not pretend it's easy all the time. There will be moments when you're triggered and want to let loose. But the more you lean into composure, the quicker you'll bounce back. You become the type of person who might get knocked down emotionally, but you don't stay there for long. With practice, others start to expect steadiness from you, and it becomes a self-fulfilling thing. That confidence grows, and you begin to rely on it yourself. If you ever doubt whether composure makes a difference, notice who others turn to during a crisis, or when a room gets tense. People want advice and support from someone who isn't just reacting to the situation, but seems to understand the bigger picture. This doesn't require perfection. What matters is the ongoing effort, pausing a little longer before you speak, breathing through a heated moment, or choosing to understand before jumping to conclusions. With time, you might notice that your ability to stay calm doesn't just influence others, but your own experience. There will be less dread about difficult conversations, fewer regrets about things said in haste, and more pride in the way you handle challenges. People around you will start to feel it too. They'll sometimes mention it, or just start coming to you more. Your relationships deepen, and you find yourself less drained by everyday stress. At the end of the day, practicing composure is about respecting yourself and the people around you. You're choosing not to make small problems into big ones or turn conflicts into public scenes. Instead, you set a tone of stability, and that peace spreads farther than you might expect. It shows up in calmer group settings, more honest conversations, and stronger decisions, whether at work, home, or anywhere people rely on each other to navigate life's ups and downs. Getting to this place doesn't need some big life transformation. It's lots of small choices stacked up. Catching an eye roll before it turns into a comment. Stepping outside for fresh air instead of staying in an argument. Writing a text and deleting it until you know it's the right tone, or even just admitting, "I'm still frustrated. Can we talk in an hour?" Over time, these small acts become habits. They build your reputation, and maybe without you even noticing, start to shape the world around you for the better. People with composure don't just benefit themselves, they improve every space they're part of. There's a stronger sense of trust, less chaos, and a lot more real teamwork and communication going on. Being the calm one is often the difference between a group sinking into confusion or rising to the occasion when things go sideways. It's a kind of leadership that doesn't always get flashy attention, but in the long run, it's what people remember and depend on. Every day offers a chance to practice. Each time you stay even a tiny bit calmer than you might have last week, you're moving in the right direction. There will always be hard moments and stressful days. That's just part of life. But with steady effort, keeping your cool gets a little easier each time. Before long, people start to recognize that when things get rough, you're the kind of person who helps steady the ship. And that's a skill worth building every single day. It's interesting how, once you start moving through life with a bit more calm and emotional balance, you actually begin to see more of what's happening around you. You notice the way people shift their posture in a meeting, who lights up when certain topics come up, when someone's avoiding eye contact, or even just that tiny change in the overall vibe when someone new enters a room. That kind of careful, mindful observation isn't about being nosy or hyper-focused on details for no reason. It's a skill that quietly shapes how well you navigate pretty much any social or professional situation. When you pay more attention to your surroundings and to people's subtle signals, you become a lot more effective at understanding them and interacting smoothly, almost as if you're reading the room even before anything's been said out loud. Sometimes, people think mindful observation means always being on the lookout for dramatic events, but most of the time it's about the really ordinary stuff. For example, you might spot a co-worker who usually cracks jokes suddenly being more quiet, or maybe there's a shift in the usual flow of conversation at family dinner. These aren't huge, obvious changes, but if you're in the habit of paying attention, you'll pick up on them. This is helpful because a lot of what people communicate is non-verbal. Tone of voice, body language, facial expressions, or even just how close or far they sit in a group. When you're tuned in, you see all the little cues that others miss. And if you notice something feels off or different, you can adjust the way you participate, or you might even ask the right question at the right time. You don't need to be naturally observant to start improving this skill. Like composure, it's something you can practice, and after a while, it starts to come automatically. One thing I find helpful is making a conscious effort to look at people's faces during conversations and pay attention to their eyes. You might notice when someone's smile doesn't reach their eyes, which says more than whatever words they're using. Or maybe you sense from the way they're standing that they'd rather be somewhere else. These observations aren't about being judgmental, but about having a more complete sense of what's truly going on, which always helps you make better decisions in social situations. In group settings, mindful observation can also help you spot who's not feeling included or who might want to speak up but feels shy. It could be noticing which team member is always overlooked in meetings, even though they might be the one with the strongest ideas. Picking up on these patterns and making space for quieter voices is something people really appreciate, but rarely name out loud. Your awareness lets you include people more intentionally or ask questions that bring others into the conversation. That makes you someone others see as thoughtful, which quietly boosts your social value in any context, whether at work, in your friend group, or at family gatherings. You'll find that this kind of focus isn't just useful for understanding others, but also for keeping tabs on yourself. It's about being aware of your own habits, reactions, and triggers. Maybe you realize you tense up every time the topic of deadlines comes up, or that you talk with your hands more than you realized. If you keep a casual mental note of those things, you can adapt when you need to. Let's say you spot yourself getting impatient early in a conversation. You can catch and redirect it before anyone else notices, which helps you stay aligned with the composure you're working on. Observation skills are also crucial in situations where you're meeting someone for the first time, like at a networking event, a party, or even during an interview. Most people get nervous and overly focused on what they're going to say next, so they miss what's really going on around them. By just taking a few moments to observe before jumping in, you might catch small signals that make it easier to break the ice. For example, you might notice a shared interest by spotting the book someone's carrying, a detail on their badge, or how someone reacts when a certain topic comes up. That extra bit of attention often leads to more genuine, memorable conversations without having to try so hard. Another aspect of mindful observation is tuning into group dynamics, the way different people interact when they're all together. At work, this can look like noticing who seems to have informal influence or who quietly steers decisions even when they aren't the manager. In your friend group, you might pick up on which topics bring everyone together and which ones make the energy drop. These kinds of insights aren't always obvious, but over time, they give you a quiet, behind-the-scenes understanding of any situation you walk into. That understanding helps you navigate tense conversations or smooth over issues before they blow up. If you think about situations where misunderstandings escalate, it's often because someone missed or ignored what was clearly being communicated through body language or tone. For instance, if a coworker is responding with shorter answers and avoiding the group, pushing them to join in more forcefully probably won't work. Observing and respecting these signals lets you approach them later in a more considerate way, giving them space or asking if they need anything. That level of care is noticed over time, making you someone others trust and confide in. Observation has benefits outside of social spaces too. For example, maybe you're working on a project and you notice trends others overlook, like changes in customer habits, or you spot a small error before it becomes a big one simply because you're paying closer attention. In problem-solving or creative roles, the habit of watching for patterns, details, or small inconsistencies can save hours of extra work. In this sense, observation becomes a kind of superpower for critical thinking and growth, not just for relating to others. When it comes to building new habits of observation, the biggest obstacle is often distractions. We live in a world where our attention is constantly pulled in a dozen different directions by phones, messages, and background noise. Developing mindful observation means setting boundaries with these distractions, or at the very least practicing being present, even when there's a lot going on. Maybe that means putting your phone face down during a conversation, muting email notifications in a meeting, or just reminding yourself to look up and scan the room when you walk in. Small adjustments like these build the muscle of attention, making it easier to tune in when it matters most. There are moments when observation means noticing the positive, not just the changes or the problems. Maybe someone usually hangs back, but is suddenly more engaged, or someone goes out of their way to help a colleague without looking for credit. By spotting these moments and mentioning them, you give recognition that most people miss. This type of attention is satisfying for everyone, and it can also boost trust and morale in teams or families. Being seen and acknowledged is a need everyone has, and being the one who notices the good helps create a more positive environment around you. Being observant can also help with conflict prevention. Sometimes tension is building under the surface, and there are clues if you're watching. Raised eyebrows, crossed arms, silent glances, or people getting quiet all of a sudden. These signs often appear before anyone says a word about what's bothering them. Spotting them early gives you a chance to steer the group in a new direction, offer a break, or just check in privately later. By being proactive, you reduce the chance of things boiling over, which keeps relationships and workplaces running more smoothly. It's also important to mention that observation is not about making judgments or assumptions about people. It's more about being curious and open rather than jumping to conclusions. If you notice a friend pulling away, you don't want to assume they're angry. You might simply ask if they're okay, or let them know you've noticed a difference and you're there if they want to talk. Staying open to explanations is key because people are complicated, and sometimes their behavior isn't about you or anything you can control. Mindful observation adds a layer of empathy to your relationships, making them richer and less prone to misunderstanding. Sometimes the art of observing well is about timing. If you jump into a discussion before you've really read the mood, you might accidentally make things awkward. But spending those first few moments just quietly looking around helps you see who's in a rush, who's open to a chat, or who might just want to get through the day without attention. Responding to those signals makes you easier to be around and helps conversations start off on a better foot. Another area where observation helps is with self-awareness during important moments, like when you're giving a presentation, negotiating, or having a heart-to-heart. Noticing your own body language, whether you're speaking too fast or if you're losing focus, lets you adjust in real time. The more you're tuned into your own signs, the less likely you are to get flustered or lose track of your point. That kind of control doesn't just make you look better, it actually helps you feel better during high-stress situations. Observation works hand in hand with patience. Sometimes it takes a while to see patterns or systems at play, especially in large groups or new environments. Being okay with not understanding everything right away is actually helpful. It keeps you humble and leaves room for new information to sink in. Over time, what seems random starts to make more sense, and you begin to notice connections or opportunities you might have missed if you were only focused on yourself. In families, mindful observation can strengthen relationships without anyone even realizing it. Noticing when your partner is running on empty or when a child needs a bit more encouragement means you can show support before there's a problem. You pick up on when to step in and when to give someone space. These small acts keep relationships running more smoothly and help everyone feel seen and cared for, even before stress or frustration boils over. As you get used to being more observant, you may notice you're less likely to take things personally when people are having an off day. Instead of getting defensive, you spot that maybe your friend was distracted by work stress, or a colleague is anxious about something unrelated. This understanding helps reduce drama and lets you be more helpful to others without making assumptions about their feelings toward you. There's value in observing not only people, but also environments. If you're in a new city, at a cafe, or even just at someone else's house, being attentive to how things run gives you information about what's considered polite, normal, or expected in that setting. Maybe you spot a coat rack near the door, so you hang up your jacket instead of carrying it around. Or you notice everyone leaves their shoes outside, so you do the same. These subtle adjustments help you blend in and show respect, quietly making people feel more comfortable around you. Work environments especially reward those who are attentive to how things actually operate, not just the official rules. If you notice that people gather in the kitchen at a certain time, or that a particular manager always leaves early on Fridays, you get a better sense of when and how to approach people. It saves you from awkward moments and helps you ask favors or set meetings when people are at their most open. This level of awareness means you accomplish more without pressing too hard or missing good timing. There's a lot to be said for noticing details in everyday activities too. Whether it's sensing when someone's been left out of a joke, the way people respond to certain foods at lunch meetings, or even just small shifts in weather that others don't comment on, mentioning what you notice tells people you're present. You're not floating through on autopilot, and that makes you relatable. Over time, those around you start to trust you more, because they sense that you're in tune with what's really happening around, not just going through the motions. Having strong observation skills eventually shapes the way you contribute ideas or solve problems. If you're used to seeing what's happening on the surface, as well as what's going on underneath, you can offer better suggestions. You bring in perspectives others might not consider because you've picked up on extra information. Teams often rely on these kinds of people to catch gaps or spot things early, which makes the whole group smarter and more effective. Another thing you might discover is that observing well helps you enjoy experiences more. Whether you're traveling, trying a new hobby, or meeting new people, the habit of slowing down and looking around means you catch more of the special, small moments. You remember places and people better, and you notice details that make the story richer later on when you share it with friends or family. All of this observation still ties back to being present. You can't take in much of what's going on if your mind is somewhere else or you're glued to your phone. Building the habit of regular check-ins, am I really here right now or am I distracted, can help you reset and catch more of what's unfolding around you, whether it's a work call, family dinner, or just waiting in line. It's worth repeating that mindful observation doesn't mean turning into a detective or over-analyzing everyone. Instead, it's a relaxed attention. You're focusing because you care, not because you're nervous or trying to control things. People pick up on the difference. When you're genuinely interested, your presence feels supportive and inviting, not judgmental. Over time, being that kind of observer helps others open up around you, share more, and invite you into new circles or conversations. You become the person they think of when they need someone who really gets it, even if they can't put into words exactly why. So when you look around and see people you admire for how effortlessly they connect, notice details and understand what's going on without pushing or prying, you can be sure they've trained themselves to be mindful observers. It's a quiet skill, but it builds trust, helps avoid problems, and makes life richer and more connected, no matter where you are or who you're with. And it all starts with just being willing to pay a little more attention each and every day. Being a mindful observer really paves the way for another level of social skill that a lot of people overlook, which is knowing when to hold back and exercise restraint before jumping into a conversation or situation. It's interesting because most people are taught, sometimes from childhood, that taking action or speaking up instantly is always better than waiting or reflecting. But in reality, that quick trigger can actually lead to misunderstandings, conflict, or regrettable outcomes. Thoughtful restraint, or the ability to pause and reflect before you speak or react, turns out to be an incredibly powerful tool for building trust and credibility, not just in professional life, but in personal relationships as well. If you pay close attention to moments of tension between people, maybe in a meeting when someone criticizes a colleague's idea, or at a family dinner when an old disagreement pops up, or even online in a heated social media thread, most of the problems that spiral out of control are triggered by someone reacting without thinking it through. Even in less dramatic situations, that impulse to immediately answer, offer advice, or fire off a strong opinion can leave the other person feeling dismissed, misunderstood, or even attacked. What is much less common is someone who pauses, thinks for even a few seconds, and then chooses their reply carefully, or maybe even says nothing. These pauses might feel awkward in the moment, but they almost always pay off. Holding back doesn't mean you're timid or have nothing to say. In fact, people who practice restraint often have the most insightful and impactful comments because their words are chosen and timed carefully. There are moments when the most influential thing you can do is wait, listen more, or say only what is strictly needed. When you're in a discussion, if you slow down and really ask yourself whether you need to add something, or if your contribution will actually help the situation, you'll be surprised at how often your restraint is noticed and respected. People they work with, friends, and even relatives tend to trust those who are selective about when they speak up. In real day-to-day situations, practicing restraint can look like biting your tongue during a meeting when you disagree with a proposal. Maybe you feel the urge to interrupt and correct someone's misstatement, but decide to wait until after the conversation to pull them aside, sparing their embarrassment in front of a group. Or maybe a friend vents to you about something you disagree with deeply, but instead of getting defensive, you simply acknowledge their feelings and don't escalate things into an argument. That little pause allows everyone to feel respected and lets emotions settle, which usually leads to much better conversations and outcomes afterward. There's a kind of maturity and self-possession that gets communicated when you show thoughtful restraint. If you look back on your own experiences, you can probably remember people who often stayed quiet at first, then when they finally gave their opinion, everyone paid attention. It's not because they were mysterious or had hidden knowledge, but because everyone learned that they didn't waste words or feel the need to jump in constantly. You can develop this quality over time by asking yourself simple questions when you feel that itch to react. Is it necessary to say this right now? Is this going to help or just make things messier? Would waiting give me more information before I decide what to say? Having restraint actually makes your words carry more weight over time. If you've ever noticed that person in the office or classroom who rarely speaks up, but when they do, the whole room quiets down, you've seen this in action. Because they don't waste time fighting for every little point, it's almost like people expect them to provide something really valuable when they finally do enter a conversation. This isn't just being quiet for the sake of being quiet, but about developing a reputation as someone whose contributions are always deliberate. Science backs this up. Researchers studying group dynamics and trust have found over and over that people view those who don't jump impulsively into every debate as steadier, more mature, and less prone to drama. This applies to leaders, co-workers, friends, even strangers. It's rooted in our instincts to seek reliability and good judgment in the people we decide to trust most. If someone is easily provoked, blurts things out, or constantly interrupts, it erodes their credibility. But when someone shows they can pause, stay calm, and weigh their words, it gives others more confidence in the value of their opinions and the soundness of their character. Another benefit of restraint is that it prevents so many unnecessary arguments or misunderstandings. If you think about the number of conflicts that start with a hasty comment, sarcastic joke, or quick retort, it's staggering. We all know what it's like to regret something said in the heat of a moment, a text message sent in anger, a defensive comeback, a careless remark at a party or in a meeting. In almost every situation, restraint would have saved everyone time and energy. Waiting even a few beats before you respond, or choosing not to respond at all, often lets the moment pass, and what could have been an argument fizzles out before it even starts. In relationships, whether with close friends, family, or romantic partners, restraint is often what keeps small issues from turning into lasting resentments. When you give yourself time to process before reacting, you see the bigger picture, not just your own feelings in that instant. Saying, "Let me think about that," or "I need a moment before I respond," is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you care about the outcome and respect both your own feelings and those of the person you're talking to. Over time, this habit strengthens bonds and makes you the person others come to with difficult topics, because they know you don't just lash out or escalate things unnecessarily. It also comes into play in group situations or high-stress environments where things can get chaotic quickly. If a deadline is looming or tension is high, you might see some people become reactive or start blaming others. The ones who stay the calmest, speak least, and only chime in when it really matters, tend to have the most steady influence on the group. Just by waiting, observing, and holding back, you end up seeing more options, finding better solutions, and giving others room to express themselves too. In modern times, the presence of social media has made restraint even harder to practice. The platforms encourage quick reactions, likes, comments, retweets, replies. It's so easy to fire off an emotional response to a post, even though nothing constructive comes from it. Practicing restraint online can mean scrolling past things that annoy you, pausing before joining a heated discussion, or deciding not to share your take on every trending subject. The long-term benefit is that you come off more thoughtful, and people start to trust your voice when you do decide to share. It's a similar pattern in work emails, group chats, and text messages. Taking an extra 30 seconds to reread what you've written, or even waiting 10 minutes before replying, especially if you're angry or annoyed, can save you lots of trouble. Sometimes in those extra moments, you realize your first response was a bit more harsh or personal than it needed to be. You can edit or delete, and the end result is a clearer, more constructive message. This practice also spares relationships from the fallout of rushed or emotional communication. A funny thing about restraint is that while it's about holding back, it actually creates more space for better communication. When you pause, it gives other people a chance to contribute, share ideas, or clarify what they mean. This makes your interactions more collaborative rather than combative or one-sided. When others learn that you don't have to dominate the conversation or always win every point, they become more open and less defensive, making the whole dynamic friendlier and more productive. Sometimes restraint involves not responding at all. Silence can speak volumes, especially if someone else is trying to draw you into drama or provoke a reaction. Not every comment or insult deserves a reply. Most people who criticize, complain, or gossip are mostly looking for attention or validation, not real engagement. If you train yourself not to jump into every negative exchange, you keep your energy for things that really deserve your time. There's also something to be said for the strength it takes to walk away from a heated discussion. If it feels like nothing good will come from pushing the issue right then, saying, "Let's talk later," or even just quietly moving on, can be the best choice. It often brings more clarity after emotions cool down, and if the topic comes up again, you're both more likely to address it respectfully. People remember those who choose peace over pointless struggle, and over the years, this habit earns you a lot of quiet respect. In decision-making, thoughtful restraint also helps you avoid impulsive choices that can lead to regrets. Whether you're considering a job offer, a major purchase, or a big life change, resisting the urge to decide right away lets you see the whole picture before you jump in. In the workplace, leaders who are seen as thoughtful and deliberate rather than impulsive are more likely to be trusted with big decisions. They make fewer mistakes because they avoid rushing into action when they don't have all the information. If you want to make restraint a bigger part of how you communicate, you can start small. The next time someone asks your opinion during a meeting, try waiting a full 5 seconds before you respond. When a close friend brings up a touchy subject, listen and say, "Let me think about that," before you dive in. On social media, resist the pull to react instantly, especially if the content stirs up strong feelings. These micro-pauses are tiny, but they change the tone of your conversation, and over time, they build a powerful habit of self-control. Noticing how this shift makes a difference can be incredibly motivating. You'll see fewer arguments escalating. People might even start to approach you more for advice, knowing you're not going to jump down their throat or give a knee-jerk reaction. You might notice a drop in your own stress as well, because restraint naturally helps prevent regrets and unnecessary turmoil. Any awkwardness you feel from pausing at first fades pretty quickly as you start to see the benefits. It's important to remember that restraint isn't about never sharing your thoughts or always staying silent. It's about choosing your moments so that when you do speak, your words are measured, relevant, and genuine. You can be passionate or firm when the time calls for it, but the difference is you choose those moments intentionally instead of letting habit or emotion run the show. That kind of communication stands out in a world full of noise. This quality of restraint also brings a certain transparency to your relationships. If you don't immediately jump to conclusions or send out rapid-fire replies, people learn over time that when you do finally weigh in, you mean what you say and say what you mean. You avoid empty promises, casual yes or no answers you haven't thought through, and end up being known for your reliability. Friends, co-workers, and family members come to appreciate the clarity and confidence that comes from a person who values their own and others' time enough to pause and reflect. You'll sometimes see the need for restraint most clearly in leaders, mentors, or teachers. The best ones are often remembered not just for what they said, but for how patient and deliberate their guidance felt. They allow questions to hang in the air, they don't rush to solve every problem, and they rarely get dragged into back-and-forth arguments that go nowhere. Instead, they set the tone for thoughtfulness, reflection, and genuine dialogue. In more personal areas, like friendships and romantic relationships, restraint can help when emotions run high. Instead of matching anger with anger or anxiety with anxiety, you give the relationship breathing room. Maybe you feel wronged or misunderstood. Your first impulse might be to argue your point passionately, but a little restraint gives you time to cool off and see things from the other person's perspective, or at least pick better words to explain how you feel. This approach doesn't avoid real issues, but instead handles them in a way that is much more likely to lead to solutions instead of stalemates. It's also worth noting the connection between restraint and self-care. By not getting swept up in every argument or drama, you protect your own time and emotional energy. Not every battle needs to be fought. Not every opinion needs to be said out loud in the heat of the moment. This selective engagement keeps you healthier, happier, and frees up space for the moments, good or bad, that actually matter in the long run. Restraint can even shape the way you pursue your goals. If you're selective about what to chase, what to respond to, and what to let go, you make progress in the areas that matter most instead of spreading your energy too thin. You learn to pick your battles, letting the small stuff slide, and focusing attention on the places you really want to influence or create change. This clarity is another byproduct of that steady, deliberate communication style. Because so much of modern life rewards quick reactions, whether it's to breaking news, work emails, family group chats, or the latest viral trend, restraint might feel at odds with how you're used to engaging. You may even feel pressure from others to respond immediately or prove you have an opinion about everything. But the truth is, the people who accomplish the most, keep the best relationships, and avoid unnecessary stress are almost always the ones who step back, think, and then move forward with intention. None of this means restraint is easy, or that you'll always get it right. There will still be slip-ups, times when you say something you wish you hadn't, or moments you wish you'd waited just a little longer before hitting send. The point isn't perfection, but growth. With each moment you pause, listen, choose your words, or hold back a reaction, you're getting better at managing yourself. This effort creates a positive loop. It makes you more respected and trusted, which makes you more confident to keep practicing thoughtful restraint. In the end, the value of restraint is pretty simple. It lets you avoid so much unnecessary conflict. It gives your words meaning, and it builds a reputation for being wise, steady, and reliable. When you combine this with genuine attention to others and a willingness to listen, you create conversations and relationships that run smoother, last longer, and have a trust built on real experience instead of fast talking or empty reactions. Thoughtful restraint is a small, quiet skill, but it turns out to be one of those things that quietly changes your life and the lives of the people around you for the better, day by day. When you start to see the real benefits of restraint, especially in the way people respond to you with more trust and respect, you also begin to appreciate the quiet strength found in simplicity. There's something about people who communicate simply and act with clear intention that just makes everything easier and more comfortable for those around them. You notice this most in conversations. The person who doesn't overcomplicate, who doesn't try to impress with fancy words or long-winded stories, but instead goes straight to the point. Instead of feeling like you have to decode what they're saying, you just get it the first time. That kind of clarity isn't just refreshing. It builds connection and makes you more relatable, whether at work, among friends, or even with strangers. Most of us have been on the receiving end of a conversation where someone is so wrapped up in technical jargon, inside jokes, or abstract explanations that you end up nodding along just to be polite, not because you actually understood anything. On the flip side, when someone takes a complicated idea, breaks it down, and explains it so plainly that you could retell it in your own words, you feel included in the conversation. Simplicity isn't about dumbing things down or talking like you're in elementary school. It's more about making information accessible so that what you want to say lands where you want it instead of getting lost in translation. One way to practice this is by being really intentional about your words. The next time you find yourself wanting to add details or give examples, ask if it's necessary for understanding, or if it just makes you feel smarter or more important. Most of the time, less is more. When you cut out the fluff and just share what's truly important, people start to listen differently. Their attention isn't being pulled in a dozen directions. They're focused, and they actually remember what you said. Over the long run, this saves misunderstandings, clarifies expectations, and just makes daily interactions a lot less stressful. It's not only about talking. The way you act can also carry a lot more meaning when you keep things straightforward. You might know people who always look busy, but never really seem to accomplish anything. Sometimes all those extra steps and unnecessary movements make everything more complicated, both for them and for those working with them. Compare that to someone who just does what needs doing, calmly and efficiently, and leaves the rest out. They don't broadcast their actions. They just get things done in a way that feels smooth and reliable. It makes working or spending time with them genuinely enjoyable because you know what to expect. Clear communication doesn't mean every conversation has to be short, bland, or lacking in personality. Actually, people who are good at simplifying can tell great stories or share information in a way that's fun and engaging. The main difference is intention, picking out the details that matter, getting rid of those that don't, and not overwhelming your listener. It's about talking with people instead of at them, and it's really easy to underestimate just how rare and valuable that is. You see the perks of this kind of simplicity most often in professional environments. For example, anyone who's worked in a company knows how easy it is for team meetings, emails, or reports to become overloaded with unnecessary information. When a manager or coworker can break things down into clear steps, highlight what matters, and skip the rest, it boosts productivity and morale. People stop wasting time clarifying what was actually meant or chasing details that are unimportant. Everyone moves forward faster, and you stand out as someone who makes life easier. In personal relationships, simple communication is often the reason conflict doesn't get out of hand. When you're arguing with a friend or loved one and you keep your words clear, focusing on one issue rather than dragging in old problems, you're much more likely to work through things quickly and respectfully. If you're the kind of person who says exactly what you mean, gently but directly, you build an environment of safety. People know where they stand with you and aren't left guessing what was actually meant. Over time, this sets a tone where honesty is valued and drama takes a back seat. Another spot where simplicity really pays off is during emotionally charged situations. When tempers are running high or stress is through the roof, our brains have a hard time processing long-winded explanations or complicated reasons. If you stick to what matters, here's the problem, here's my feeling, here's one idea to fix it, the tension starts to dissolve, or at least doesn't get worse. Leaders who use clear, steady communication during tough moments are remembered for it, and friends or partners who do the same are easier to rely on. It might sound almost too easy, but the hard part about simplicity is resisting the urge to show off or be dramatic. In social media posts, public speaking, or even day-to-day banter, it's tempting to add more for the sake of attention. But the more you can stick to what matters, the more people will gravitate toward you. They'll want your opinion, ask your advice, and trust that you're not going to muddy the waters just to stand out. Another benefit to keeping things simple is that it's easier to apologize or acknowledge mistakes. Instead of offering excuses or over-explaining, you can just say, "I'm sorry, I messed up," and instantly clear the air. This saves everyone time and prevents grudges from building up over something that could have been resolved in a minute. The same goes for gratitude. Thanking someone in a way that's direct and real lands more powerfully than a speech or a compliment that gets lost in too many words. A good way of checking if your communication is clear is to ask yourself if someone could retell what you just said without changing the core message. If you're uncertain, try to strip down your message a bit more. With practice, this becomes a habit. And soon, even out of habit, your words will start packing more punch. In group settings, especially if people come from different backgrounds or speak different languages, clear, simple speech becomes even more important. It levels the playing field and makes sure nobody's left out. Simplicity also helps prevent drama and misunderstanding, especially in digital communication where tone and context get lost. When you send a text or an email, shorter and straightforward is usually safer than long and emotional. There are fewer chances for someone to misread your intent or for you to accidentally say something you regret. This doesn't mean being cold, but being respectful of the other person's time and the natural limits of communicating through a screen. On the job, simplicity in your workflow is a huge asset. If you have a tendency to overcomplicate your process, you not only waste your own energy but confuse teammates around you. Think of the difference between someone who sends a straightforward checklist and someone who sends an essay of steps with unnecessary side notes. The first helps everybody focus. The second loses people in the weeds. When you simplify, you increase your own value because you become the go-to person who can get things done without making everything complicated. Simplicity in action often looks like sticking to routines that work and not feeling pressured to reinvent the wheel every time. For example, if you find that organizing your day with just 3 or 4 top priorities keeps you focused, don't ditch what works for a complex new system just because it sounds cool or trendy. The same goes for managing your calendar. Clear blocks of time for meetings, unbroken stretches for deep work, and a routine for following up on tasks make your day run smoother than bouncing between a million apps and reminders. It's really easy to see how simplicity makes counseling or leadership roles more effective. People in these positions often hear a lot of different problems, some big and some small, and it's tempting to try to offer massive solutions or use impressive-sounding advice. But most of the time, the best leaders or counselors stick to the facts, ask good questions, and lay out clear steps, maybe just 1 or 2 at a time, so the person they're helping doesn't feel overwhelmed. This strength to keep things simple is what gets people to come back for more help, because they actually feel understood and empowered to make real change. With friends and family, keeping things simple creates a healthier environment. You don't need to host elaborate parties or give extravagant gifts. Often, it's the small, consistent things that matter most, like checking in with a direct message, making time for a phone call, or lending a hand without any ceremony. Simpler actions and gestures feel more authentic, and people look forward to being with you because it's comfortable, honest, and low pressure. Remember, none of this is about being boring or never showing your personality. Simplicity in speech and action lets your personality shine because it removes all the noise and extras that get in the way. If you have a quirky sense of humor or a unique outlook, people actually see it more when you're speaking clearly instead of overcomplicating. Even your differences become assets because they're easy for others to grasp and enjoy. Living simply also means you have more energy to give to the things and people that matter. When your communication is clear, you spend less time in damage control or fixing misunderstandings, and more time making progress or sharing experiences together. At work, this efficiency gets noticed and rewarded. Among friends, it builds a sense of reliability and comfort that's rare and valuable. Embracing simplicity means not overcommitting too, knowing when your yes should really be a no, and only taking on what you can realistically do well. When you're honest about your limits in straightforward language, people respect you more. It saves relationships from resentment down the road, because you set clear expectations instead of saying yes just to please others. If you've made mistakes in the past or come off as confusing, there's nothing wrong with letting others know you're working on simplifying your communication. People generally appreciate when you say, "I realize I overcomplicated things before. Here's what I meant." This transparency helps reset relationships and sets a tone for better conversations going forward. It also encourages others to do the same, making life easier for everyone. Over time, you'll notice that the people you most enjoy being around, at work or socially, are often those who make things feel simple, not because life actually is simple, but because they choose not to complicate things further. They ask straightforward questions, say what they mean, do what they promise, and don't put on airs. You naturally want to be around them, trust them more, and remember what they say. If you want to get in the habit of communicating with more simplicity, start by taking a pause before you speak or write. Ask yourself, what do I really want to say here? Or is there a shorter way to explain this? When giving instructions, try ordering your steps so they're clear. When telling stories, stick to the points that move things forward or build connection. And if people ever look confused or ask a lot of questions, it's a good sign to scale things back. It's amazing how much anxiety you can remove from relationships just by being clear and direct. For people who grew up in families where communication was passive or indirect, simple statements like, "I'm tired today, but I want to catch up soon," or "I'd rather not talk about that right now," can be life-changing. You're not starting an argument, just setting a clear boundary, and people feel safe knowing you mean what you say. Even in moments of conflict, simplicity holds up. During tough conversations, repeating the core point without piling on grievances can help both sides stay focused on solving the problem instead of getting distracted by old baggage. This way, the situation is less likely to spiral out of control. Something else to notice is that people tend to remember simple explanations and clear actions more than long speeches or complicated solutions. If someone leaves a conversation understanding what you meant, they're more likely to follow through, support your idea, or respect your wishes. That's true whether the conversation is about splitting a bill, planning a project, or just deciding where to eat. There's even a health benefit to this approach. Overcomplicating things adds stress, mentally and emotionally. When you keep life and communication simple, you feel less weighed down and more able to focus. That ease shows up in your body language, your mood, and your patience with others. People pick up on your calm vibe, and your relationships get stronger as a result. In meetings, presentations, or group discussions, the person who steps up and summarizes the main point, or who outlines just 2 or 3 needed actions, is a breath of fresh air. That skill shortcuts confusion and gives everyone confidence about next steps. Often all it takes is stating, "The main thing here is X," or "Let's focus on the first 3 steps and revisit the rest later." Kids, teens, and adults all benefit from environments where simplicity rules. At home, in school, in social circles. If you model it yourself, others will often follow your lead. It's contagious in the best way possible. Whole teams or groups can become more honest, more efficient, and more enjoyable to be part of when clarity and simple communication become the norm. Staying intentional about simplicity isn't always easy. You'll hit moments when you want to impress or cover up nerves with more words, or when a problem feels so big that only a complicated response seems right. But if you stick to basics, try your best to say and do only what's necessary, you'll be doing everyone, including yourself, a favor. Over time, you'll see that the most impactful moments are often the simplest, and the strongest bonds are built from straight talk and straightforward actions. Simplicity is, at its core, about respect. Respect for the listener's time, intelligence, and ability to engage. When you make it easier for others to understand you, and when your actions are purposeful, you open the door to trust, meaningful dialogue, and genuine connection. In a busy, noisy world, that's a skill that will always set you apart and make your presence valued, no matter where you are or what you're trying to accomplish. When you start treating simplicity as your go-to way of speaking and acting, it's surprising how much more comfortable you feel in your own skin and how people naturally respond to that. You also start to notice something else in those who really stand out in day-to-day life. A kind of quiet confidence that isn't about showing off or trying to be in charge, but just being fully at ease with who you are. This subtle confidence often comes out through body language, the way you move, even the way you listen and respond. It isn't about dominating group conversations or cracking jokes to get everyone's attention, but rather bringing a sense of self-assurance into any room you walk into. People are drawn to that, sometimes without even realizing why. A lot of folks think you have to be outspoken, loud, or the life of the party to feel or look confident. But the reality is often the opposite. There's a quiet sort of confidence, one that isn't loud or showy, that draws people in because it feels authentic and grounded. When you carry yourself this way, without the need to constantly seek approval or proof your self-worth, it shows. You don't rush to defend yourself at every little comment. You don't need to list your achievements every time you meet someone new. Instead, there's an underlying attitude that says, I'm comfortable being here and I'm fine with who I am. You'll notice these people in group situations. Maybe there's a team meeting and among all the voices trying to be heard, one person just sits calmly, listening with interest. Not withdrawn, but simply content with letting others talk unless there's a real need to fill the air. When this person does speak, others lean in and pay attention, maybe because they don't talk just to talk. This kind of presence makes people naturally curious about you. It's like you're quietly inviting people to take notice without demanding it. A big part of having this kind of confidence is in your non-verbal communication, eye contact, posture, and gestures. If you're feeling at ease with yourself, it shows. You hold eye contact naturally, not in a challenging way, but as a form of connection. Your shoulders are relaxed, your posture open, and you're not fidgeting or covering your face. When you're listening to someone, you're genuinely engaged, not checking your phone, not looking past them for someone better in the room, just present. These small cues signal not only self-confidence, but also respect for the person you're interacting with. Your voice plays a part too. People who feel secure don't rush, don't mumble, and aren't afraid of the occasional silence between sentences. They speak at a comfortable pace and volume, which actually tends to have a calming effect on everyone else. Even if you don't feel confident every moment, practicing this kind of presence in your speech makes a huge difference in how others respond to you and, interestingly, boosts your own sense of self-assurance over time. One of the ways this shows up is that you don't need to oversell your ideas or get defensive when someone challenges you. Instead, you're able to share your thoughts clearly, and if people disagree, you're okay with that. Not because you think you're always right, but because you're secure enough to not need everybody's approval. If you find yourself saying things like, I see it differently, and that's all right, or even just listening to feedback without shrinking or overreacting, you're on the right track. Subtle confidence lets you stand your ground without turning every disagreement into a competition. It's also about consistency. People who carry themselves with quiet confidence don't switch up their personality or opinions just to fit the crowd. You can trust that the way they act on Monday morning is basically the same as on Friday night. This predictability makes others relax. There's no undercurrent of insecurity or a need to one-up anyone. That steadiness is magnetic and comforting, especially in a world where lots of people feel pressured to be someone they are not to fit in. If you've ever worried about coming across as arrogant when you try to show confidence, it helps to remember that the difference is in the approach. Arrogance is about needing others to see you as important and constantly seeking validation. Quiet confidence is about finding that validation within yourself, knowing your strengths and accepting your weaknesses without making them the center of attention. If you're focused on building people up and making them feel at ease, you'll be seen as confident, not cocky. Practical ways to cultivate this kind of confidence tend to look a lot like everyday self-care. For instance, Keeping promises you make to yourself and others builds up an inner sense of reliability. Reflecting on your values and acting in line with them, not just when it's convenient, strengthens your self-respect. Taking the time each day to recognize small wins or progress can boost your self-image, so you aren't always chasing approval from outside sources. Over time, these habits help even the shyest and most doubtful people grow into a steadier self-assurance. In work environments, quiet confidence stands out. If there's a stressful deadline or a tough meeting ahead, people gravitate to co-workers who stay composed and don't contribute to group panic. These people ask thoughtful questions, admit what they don't know without embarrassment, and offer help without making a big deal about it. Their work tends to speak for itself, and they become the person that others want on their team for challenging projects. Outside of work, confidence shows in small but important moments. For example, if you're getting to know new friends or spending time with family, being quietly confident means you can be yourself. You don't feel pressured to agree with everything or pretend to like things you don't. You might not laugh at every joke or go along with plans you're not excited about, and that's okay. People respect those who are clear about what they want and don't want, as long as it's done with kindness. Even in romantic relationships, this kind of steady self-assuredness is attractive. Partners often feel more secure when they know you're not looking to them for constant validation or reassurance. When conflicts come up, you don't resort to guilt trips or dramatic gestures, but talk things through calmly and honestly. That doesn't mean pretending not to care or hiding your feelings. It means having the self-worth to be honest, even when it's hard, and the confidence to know you'll both be okay, no matter the outcome. You can also notice subtle confidence in how some people handle rejection, mistakes, or embarrassment. Instead of crumbling or becoming defensive, they take things in stride. Maybe they laugh it off, admit what went wrong, or simply move forward without making it a big deal. This isn't about not caring. It's about not basing your whole self-image on the approval of others or the outcome of a single situation. Another thing about steady confidence is how it allows you to give genuine compliments and encourage others without feeling diminished yourself. People who are unsure about their abilities sometimes hold back praise, worried that it makes others shine too brightly in comparison. But the truly confident are happy to draw attention to others, because it doesn't take anything away from their own worth. This generosity stands out. When you can be happy for others and show sincere appreciation, you become even more well-liked and trusted. Quiet confidence also shapes your approach to challenges. If you don't have all the answers, you're comfortable asking for help or more time to figure things out. You're less likely to fake knowledge or make promises you can't keep, which builds trust. Instead of seeing every task or conversation as a risk to your reputation, you view them as chances to learn or share something useful. This healthy attitude means fewer regrets and more meaningful progress over days, months, and years. A simple but effective practice is to get comfortable with silence, both when you're speaking and when you're listening. Sometimes you'll find that people who radiate calm don't rush to fill awkward pauses. They let the conversation breathe, which communicates that they trust themselves and aren't rattled by a bit of quiet. Giving others that space makes them feel more comfortable too, and can lead to deeper, more honest exchanges. If you want to project this kind of subtle confidence, some of the best starting points are basic, physical signals, standing or sitting with your back straight, speaking clearly but not loudly, and looking people in the eye. It might feel nerve-wracking at first, especially if you're used to second-guessing yourself, but with repetition, it gets easier. Each time you handle a challenging conversation with composure or stick to your opinion in a group without getting anxious, you build another layer of confidence. Your internal dialogue matters too. Instead of repeating negative self-talk or replaying every social misstep, intentionally remind yourself of your strengths and the things you do well, no matter how small. Being your own ally, rather than your own critic, often comes out in the way you talk to others without you realizing. If you're treating yourself with respect in your head, it leaks out into your posture, tone of voice, and the way you set boundaries. Paying attention to personal boundaries is another subtle sign of real confidence. Someone who is sure of themselves can say no without making a scene or coming off as rude. They choose commitments carefully, don't apologize for their preferences, and respect others' boundaries as well. You'll see it in small details: the friend who knows when to leave a party, the colleague who can turn down an unnecessary project, the partner who is clear about their needs while still being caring. Consistency also helps your confidence grow over time. When your actions match your words, and when people can rely on you to follow through, you start to trust yourself more too. You know you can face things head-on, which gives you a calm steadiness even when life gets unpredictable. Every small success builds on the last until people naturally look to you in times of uncertainty. Being present in the moment, actually paying attention to what's in front of you instead of tuning out or worrying about what others think, makes you come across as confident and collected. If you're always engaged rather than faking interest or multitasking, your focus is clear to others. People naturally feel valued in your company and want to spend time with you because your attention feels like genuine respect. It's important to remember that no one feels confident all the time. There are days when doubt creeps in, or when things just don't go as planned. The point isn't to fake it or pretend to be superhuman, but to develop habits and attitudes that provide a solid foundation, even on rough days. Accept that confidence will go up and down, but if your anchor is within yourself and you practice the habits mentioned above, you're better equipped to bounce back and keep moving forward. With practice, this quiet kind of confidence becomes second nature. Over time, instead of feeling anxious in new situations or needing approval from everyone, you trust your own judgment more. You stop comparing yourself so much to others or worrying about standing out for the wrong reasons. People around you pick up on your steadiness. They often start coming to you for advice, support, or leadership, not because you're the loudest or flashiest, but because you're reliable and sure of yourself. This way of moving through the world actually frees up more of your energy and mind to focus on what you enjoy, rather than keeping up a front or scrambling for approval. You get to relax a bit more. You bring out the best in others because you're comfortable bringing out the best in yourself, not by showing off, but by being consistently supportive, thoughtful, and at ease in your own lane. In groups and teams, you find that this subtle confidence helps everyone work together better. If someone's not competing for attention, there's less drama and more room for collaboration. You can accept feedback, admit mistakes, and pivot when needed, which makes you someone that others want to keep around for a long time. So, as you keep building good habits in communication and relationships, weaving in this quiet, genuine kind of confidence adds an extra layer to everything you do. You become the person who helps others feel good about themselves simply by being good with yourself. People notice, they appreciate it, and you'll see your circle of influence grow, not because you pushed for it, but because the steady, grounded energy you bring is something everyone wants a part of. That's something you can start building any day, just by paying attention to how you carry yourself, how you treat yourself, and the kind of respect you offer all around. Once you start to develop that steady, subtle confidence and begin relying more on your own sense of self than outside validation, it becomes much easier to simply accept people as they are. This kind of non-judgmental acceptance tends to shift everything about the way you relate to others. Whether it's at work, at home, or in some random social setting, you notice how much lighter things feel when you're not automatically analyzing, labeling, or sizing people up. You can appreciate different personalities, backgrounds, and experiences, not because you agree with everything or want to be everyone's best friend, but because you recognize that everyone's got their own battles and stories playing out in the background. Suddenly, Each encounter isn't a potential contest or a source of stress. You're just sharing space with people who are as complicated and unpredictable as you are. Most people are used to being judged, sometimes even before they say a word. It's not always intentional. We're trained by society, family, and even our own fears to sort people as quickly as possible. Interesting or boring, safe or risky, reliable or not. But the minute someone senses that you're not searching for their flaws or quietly keeping score, you become incredibly approachable. They're more open, more real, and more relaxed around you. This creates an atmosphere where honest connection is easier and where people want to return to your company again and again. Non-judgmental acceptance is not about pretending everyone's perfect or ignoring problems. It just means seeing the full picture before reacting and acknowledging that you don't see everything. Someone might seem distracted, but instead of jumping to the conclusion that they're rude or uninterested, you consider that maybe they're tired, anxious, or dealing with something you know nothing about. This instinct to give people the benefit of the doubt lifts a lot of the tension from everyday conversations. You'll notice this most with people who are different from you. Different culture, different style, or just a different point of view. If you're the kind of person who welcomes those differences, who doesn't feel threatened or uncomfortable because someone else lives or thinks in another way, people notice and appreciate that. They won't always say it, but being accepted just as they are feels like a breath of fresh air, especially to those who don't often find it elsewhere. Being non-judgmental is also about the way you react when people make mistakes. Everybody messes up, but a lot of environments don't make room for that reality. In a truly accepting space, you're still held accountable, but without humiliation or shame. If someone forgets a responsibility or admits to a weakness, you can support them in fixing it without making it personal. The conversation becomes about solving the issue, not pointing fingers. Over time, this creates trust. Colleagues, friends, and family see that you separate the action from the person and aren't going to use their worst moment against them. A practical way to put this mindset into action is by becoming curious instead of reactive. When you feel the urge to judge or dismiss someone, pause and ask yourself, what might be going on for them? Or, what don't I know? This short moment of curiosity interrupts that instant rush to judge and can completely change your conversation or your day. Even if you end up disagreeing later, you've opened a space for genuine understanding. In workplaces, non-judgmental acceptance can be a game changer. Work teams often bring together totally different personalities, skills, and approaches. If each person feels pressured to hide their quirks or constantly defend their ways, group energy disappears fast. Acceptance from one or more members, especially those seen as leaders, removes that pressure. People are more creative, more loyal, and less guarded with new ideas or feedback. Mistakes get handled more quickly and honestly, keeping the group focused on what matters. Family dynamics benefit just as much. Family can be the area where everyone's judgments run deepest, with years of memories shaping each small interaction. A non-judgmental family member encourages others to show up as they really are, even if it's messy, sad, or not how others would handle things. This doesn't mean you become a doormat or let go of your values, but you don't cut people down because their choices don't match yours. Over time, even grudges lose their power, and forgiveness comes more easily when you're not tied up in condemning every mistake or difference. Friendships grow stronger too. When you accept your friends for who they are with all their quirks, maybe the friend who's always late, or the one who never RSVPs on time, or who cancels plans sometimes, you make space for real, lasting bonds. If you react to every irritating habit or mistake like it's a major offense, the friendship gets brittle. But when you acknowledge that everyone messes up and has flaws, including you, it's easier to relax. Your friends feel safer being themselves, and so do you. It's important to keep in mind that non-judgmental acceptance isn't about ignoring harmful behavior, tolerating disrespect, or putting up with things that cross your boundaries. You can still address problems, set limits, and have strong standards. The difference is that you do this from a place of respect, not from the need to control, shame, or punish. For example, if a colleague misses a deadline, instead of assuming they're lazy, you might check in, "Hey, I noticed this didn't get done. What happened?" Maybe you find out they were overwhelmed and just needed more support. You're able to solve problems together instead of getting stuck in blame. When you make a habit of responding this way, it often gets reflected back. People start treating you with the same openness and patience because you've set the tone. The atmosphere at work or home becomes less tense, and you get more honest communication because people aren't scared of being harshly judged. This is the root of deep trust and creates space for both growth and forgiveness. When you're talking about big controversial topics like politics, religion, or deeply personal issues, most people brace themselves for judgment. Non-judgmental acceptance turns those conversations into opportunities for learning, not battles for who's right or wrong. If you can hold space while someone explains their view, even if you totally disagree, people will trust you with the truth. They don't have to fake it just to keep your friendship or respect. For parents, teachers, or mentors, this approach changes everything about how kids and teens experience the world. When young people know that they can mess up or say something unpopular and not lose your respect, they're more honest and resilient. They're also less likely to get stuck in shame or secrecy, which means you actually have a better shot at helping when it matters. A student who knows their mistakes don't define them, or a teenager who feels safe talking about a scary topic stands a much better chance of growing in healthy ways. One important skill for living out non-judgmental acceptance is learning how to listen without jumping in to fix, advise, or question someone's whole approach to life. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is just be present, ask gentle questions, and leave room for silence as the other person thinks out loud. If they want advice, they'll usually ask. Even then, leading with kindness softens your advice and makes it more likely to be heard. People don't always need to be corrected. They often need to be reassured that they're still accepted, even when they don't have it all figured out. If you're not sure whether you're being judgmental or not, just watch your gut reactions when people behave in ways you don't like or understand. Do you start to tell yourself a story? They're irresponsible, thoughtless, or selfish. Or do you just notice what's happening and stay open? The difference is subtle, but you can feel it. When you don't let your first story take over, you keep a lot more doors open. Your relationships have room to breathe. It also helps to be honest about your own stuff. If you know you're quick to judge certain behaviors because of past experiences, it's worth admitting that to yourself. Being mindful of your triggers means you can keep them from running the show. Everyone has moments of judgment, but what counts is catching yourself, resetting, and opening up the possibility that people are doing their best under tough circumstances. At work, in friendships, and even with strangers, practicing this habit makes you stand out. There's so much stress, competition, and pressure to perform in most environments that someone who doesn't judge right away is a real relief. People naturally gravitate to you for advice or just to be around someone who isn't going to criticize or gossip. You might get included in more conversations, be entrusted with more responsibility, or simply enjoy more peaceful interactions because you radiate respect. This approach feeds right back into your own mental and emotional well-being. Letting go of judgment, especially when it's automatic or petty, frees up a lot of your own energy. You stop taking other people's actions so personally, and you don't waste time or emotion getting dragged into drama that doesn't belong to you. Instead, you feel lighter, more focused, and generally happier in your day-to-day life. Non-judgmental acceptance isn't about pretending everyone gets a free pass or never being disappointed. It's about giving people room to be human, room to mess up, and room to grow. The same goes for yourself. The more you accept others without harsh criticism, the easier it becomes to accept your own imperfections. This helps you bounce back from your own setbacks, try new things without fear of humiliation, and keep learning from those around you. People often worry that being non-judgmental means they have no standards. But in reality, it takes real strength to hold clear values and still be open to people who are different or in the middle of a struggle. When you set boundaries, it's possible to do it kindly without making the other person feel small. "I respect you, but I can't be part of this behavior" is much more powerful and more likely to strengthen a relationship over time than "you're bad for doing this." When disagreements come up, which they always do, your ability to stay open is tested. You can disagree without being disagreeable. Sometimes the best move is to say, "I see it differently, but I'm glad we could talk about it." This invites more future discussions rather than shutting people down. And when you're the one who's made a mistake or is on the receiving end of disagreement, you appreciate being met with the same understanding. You'll start to notice that the most resilient groups, teams, families, or circles of friends, are those where people feel accepted even when they're not at their best. Productivity goes up, stress goes down, and everyone spends less time watching their backs or hiding parts of themselves. It's easier to ask for help and to offer it. People show up more fully, and as a result, the group as a whole gets stronger. If you want to build this into your daily life, make it a habit to check your attitude during conversations. Am I really trying to understand, or am I just waiting for my turn to critique? If you're feeling reactive, pause and breathe before you respond. Sometimes it also means withholding gossip or not joining in when others are piling on. If you feel the need to vent about someone, try focusing on the result you want, not tearing someone down. This shifts the energy and keeps your interactions cleaner and more positive. You might find that adopting this mindset helps with diversity and inclusion too, whether at work or in social circles. People from different backgrounds, cultures, or lifestyles instantly sense whether a space is accepting or not. Real acceptance, shown through how you listen, include others, and respond to mistakes, encourages a sense of belonging. People are more likely to contribute their unique ideas and talents when they're not worried about judgment. With practice, non-judgmental acceptance gets easier, but you never really arrive. It's always ongoing. Life throws up new situations, new people, and new challenges that will test your willingness to stay open. The skill is in remembering that everyone is living with their own set of struggles, ambitions, and histories, and you usually only see a tiny slice of any of that. Giving space for all the unknowns is not just wise, it also makes everyday life a whole lot calmer and fuller. In the end, this attitude of openness and acceptance not only improves your connections with others, but also builds up your own sense of resilience and peace. With less judgment clouding your interactions, you attract honest conversations and genuine friendships. The reward is richer communication, fewer misunderstandings, and a community, however small or large, where you can all bring your real selves and keep growing together, one day at a time. Adopting an attitude of non-judgmental acceptance not only transforms how we interact with others, but it also creates the foundation for something equally powerful, showing genuine appreciation in place of shallow flattery. This is a shift that might seem small at first, but over the course of everyday interactions, it really stands out. A lot of people aren't used to being noticed for the everyday things they do right. They almost expect that compliments are just social currency, or worse, a way for someone to get what they want. When you offer real appreciation, focused on something specific, authentic, and rooted in what you honestly admire, it surprises people in the best possible way and quickly separates you from anyone who's just delivering empty praise for attention or favor. You can often spot the difference between flattery and real appreciation right away. Flattery usually feels generic. It's the automatic, "You look great," or "You're the best." That requires no effort and could honestly be said to anyone. Even if it sounds nice, people tend to shrug it off or forget it, especially if they sense it's being used as a shortcut or just to fill space in an awkward moment. Genuine appreciation takes a little more effort, but the effect sticks for much longer. Instead of a throwaway compliment, you might say, "I really noticed how you handled that situation with patience today," or "Your attention to detail on that project saved us all a ton of trouble." When people hear something that's honest and specific, it hits different. It lands as something true to them, instead of feeling like you're saying what they expect to hear. There's some interesting science behind why honest appreciation feels so different from flattery. Studies around workplace dynamics and even in family settings show that sincere, earned compliments activate the reward centers in our brains. It's not just about ego or fishing for good vibes. Genuine recognition makes people more motivated, more open, and more likely to trust the person who gave it. When someone takes the time to point out something real, it feels like proof that you're valued, not for putting on a show, but for showing up in your own way. At the same time, people are surprisingly quick to spot flattery, and it can even have the opposite effect if done too obviously. Generic praise can start to feel manipulative, like it's there to soften an ask or to curry favor instead of actually noticing something meaningful. If you're in a work meeting and someone always compliments the boss with, "You always have the smartest ideas," it chips away at trust instead of building it. It's more likely to make colleagues roll their eyes or tune out than to create any sense of real connection. After a while, it becomes noise. So how do you give genuine appreciation and not just blend into the chorus of automatic compliments people hand out every day? The first place to start is observation. Take note of the things people do that actually impress you or make your day a little better. This doesn't always mean big achievements or wild talents. Often, the most meaningful appreciation is for small, consistent actions, like someone who makes everyone's job easier by getting their part done on time, or a friend who always checks in with a text after a rough week. Naming those moments, either in the moment or after, goes much further than hyping up the obvious or expected qualities. Another important element is timing. Immediate appreciation feels genuine because it's linked to what's actually happening. Waiting too long, or storing up compliments like you're checking off a list, can come across as insincere. If you notice something good, mention it as soon as possible. That way, it's clear that you mean what you say. It's rooted in your actual experience, not just an attempt to be seen as nice or supportive. The impact of honest appreciation isn't just on the receiver either. The person who makes a habit of noticing and naming what they admire tends to become a more optimistic and trusted presence in any setting. It changes how people look at you because it suggests you're actually paying attention, that you value what's happening around you, and that you're not so self-absorbed as to ignore small wins. Even people who seldom hear genuine compliments can begin to relax and be more themselves when they realize you see them in this more thoughtful way. In family life, this approach can quietly transform the atmosphere. Kids who hear appreciation for their effort, like, "I saw you really tried to help your sister today," that made her feel better, start to internalize those positive qualities because the words match actual experience. Partners who feel noticed for their everyday actions, not just on special dates or after a big gesture, become more connected because the relationship feels less transactional and more grounded in mutual care. Instead of keeping track of who did what, people are naturally drawn to doing more of what gets honestly recognized. Friendships work the same way. Flattery can sometimes grease the wheels in a group or break the ice with new people, but it won't keep a real friendship alive. What knits people together is the sense that your good qualities, or hard work or vulnerability, aren't going unnoticed. Saying, "I always feel better after talking to you because you're a great listener." Or, "I love how you're not afraid to be yourself. It makes the rest of us more real," is deeply memorable. These kinds of compliments are remembered long after the conversation ends. Workplaces especially notice the difference between cultures of flattery and those of real appreciation. When recognition is only given to placate or as a shallow motivator, like "great job, team," at the end of every meeting, people get numb to it. They know it's just noise. On the other hand, when managers or teammates take time to thank someone for something specific or call out a win that seemed small, trust goes up and engagement grows. People want to repeat what works, not just for approval, but because it feels impactful. Over time, the whole atmosphere changes to be more supportive, motivated, and less dog-eat-dog. Even strangers respond to genuine appreciation. Think about situations like customer service. How rare is it for someone to sincerely thank a server, cashier, or driver for doing something well, instead of just throwing out a robotic thanks? Those who take a second to say, "I really appreciate how quickly you fixed that," or "You made this easier for me, thanks," stand out. The other person might even smile or remember you the next time. These little moments build community, even among people who may never see each other again. If you want to start giving more honest appreciation, start by tuning in to what impresses you or what helps you out, or even just makes life a bit nicer. Don't wait for grand gestures. Look for steady effort or positive qualities. It could be a coworker who always makes new people feel welcome, a friend who manages to show up even when busy, or a neighbor keeping their garden tidy and cheerful. The more you notice, the easier it is to speak up and say so. The way you phrase things matters too. A true compliment doesn't have to be grand or poetic. In fact, simple words often land best, especially if you focus on action, effort, or a specific result. You might say, "It meant a lot that you checked in with me this week," or "Your summary during the meeting helped me understand the project." These don't sound rehearsed or exaggerated, and that's exactly why they work. If you catch yourself giving out generic praise, it's not the end of the world. But take it as a cue to dig a little deeper. Instead of only saying "great work," add one line about why. You handled the deadline calmly, or your report made the numbers clear, or you kept people motivated on a tough day. That extra layer changes everything about how your words are received. Receiving appreciation can be tough for some people, especially if they're not used to it, so it's worth remembering that you can leave it at that. You don't have to push them to believe you or turn it into a big deal. Just offer the compliment, let it land, and move on. With time, you might notice people becoming more open to feedback and less guarded, simply because you've shown you notice the real, positive side of who they are. In romantic relationships, appreciation keeps the bond strong even after the excitement of the early days fades. Partners who regularly point out the things they value, whether it's a meal cooked, a thoughtful gesture, or emotional support, create an environment where both people feel seen beyond their roles or obligations. Flattery, on the other hand, eventually rings hollow if it's not linked to genuine admiration or understanding. It's also a good idea to remember your own contributions and accept appreciation when it comes your way. Sometimes it's tempting to brush off compliments out of modesty or uncertainty. "Oh, it was nothing," or "I guess anyone could have done that." While humility is great, there's no harm in a simple thanks and a moment to let yourself feel recognized. Accepting sincere appreciation graciously also encourages others to keep noticing and reinforcing the positives, making the connection all the stronger. In moments of conflict or tough conversations, turning to appreciation can even be a bridge to better understanding. If a disagreement arises, you might still find something to value. "I really admire how persistent you are about making things right, even when we don't agree." It doesn't erase differences, but it softens edges and keeps the discussion grounded in mutual respect. People are far less defensive when they've heard something specific and honest about what they do well. On teams, creating a habit of real appreciation instead of forced flattery takes conscious effort at first. If you're a leader, this means modeling the shift yourself by naming wins or individual growth you see, not just group-pleasing achievements. If you're a team member, you can do the same on a peer level. Celebrate someone quietly to them, mention in a group chat what you genuinely noticed, or let the whole team know how someone's unique efforts helped. Over time, this builds momentum and helps others shift out of autopilot praise. The beauty of genuine appreciation in everyday life is that it's lasting and contagious. When you're on the lookout for things to admire, you'll feel better about your community and the people in it. Others will likely start adopting the same habit back toward you and those around them. People never really tire of being seen for their true qualities, not as a ploy for attention, but because someone took the time to look beneath the surface or past the obvious. Sometimes this takes a bit of courage, especially if you're complimenting someone you don't know well, or if you're worried about coming across as insincere. The good news is, when words are straight from your experience, most people can tell. You don't have to force anything or gush. Just pick a fact or an authentic impression, put it into words, and let it stand. If you worry that people will think you want something in return, it's helpful to show appreciation at unexpected times or for things that aren't usually rewarded. Saying thank you for efforts behind the scenes or for the traits people don't boast about is a real trust builder. It proves your intentions aren't just about getting ahead or making yourself look good. In the digital world, where so much interaction is quick and fleeting, likes, emojis, standard congrats messages, taking time for something more real will stand out. Even a well-chosen sentence in an email or comment like, "I keep learning from your posts, thanks for sharing ideas that make me think differently," feels richer than whatever algorithm-boosted content might offer. The recipient can sense that you actually paused and saw them as a person, not just a screen name. Developing a habit for appreciation doesn't have to be forced or scheduled. Just stay aware in your daily routine. If someone makes your coffee exactly right, thank them in a way that makes it clear you recognize their effort. If the bus driver waits an extra moment for you to board, let them know you're grateful. If your spouse or roommate remembers to grab your favorite snack, let your gratitude be specific, not just routine. Over time, as genuine appreciation becomes second nature, you'll likely notice that your network, friendships, and teams all become closer and more energized. People look forward to being around you because it feels good to be seen, not just acknowledged. Issues are worked through more easily because the foundation is one of trust and honest communication, instead of surface-level smiles and unearned praise. At its core, transitioning from flattery to sincere appreciation is about respect. You're respecting the effort, thoughtfulness, or presence of others. You're making sure people know they matter for real reasons, not just because it's polite or strategic. This kind of respect builds up over time and makes you someone whose words carry weight. Your praise isn't for sale and is never on autopilot. Authentic appreciation also makes mistakes and setbacks easier to handle. When feedback or correction is needed, it's much less threatening if the person knows you see and value their strengths. They can take criticism in stride because it's clear you're invested in their success, not just pointing out faults. As you get practice at seeing what's genuinely worthy of praise in others, you'll also become less reliant on constant praise yourself. You'll find satisfaction in noticing what's working, appreciating strengths in others, and building environments where people feel valued and motivated for all the right reasons. These are the spaces where people do their best work, are most honest, and come back day after day wanting to give and receive more of their true selves. So whenever you catch yourself reaching for a generic compliment or ready to deliver more flattery, pause. Ask what you truly admire, what stands out, or what made things better for you, the group, or someone else. Offer that insight openly. After a while, your words will matter even more, and the relationships you care about will become stronger simply because you took the time to really see and appreciate the people in front of you. Staying focused on genuine appreciation and skipping empty flattery is the kind of habit that actually makes you more present in your relationships and daily life. As you get more used to observing and naming the specific things you value in others, you start to realize how much more powerful it is to be truly there for the people around you. This idea of purposeful presence is one of those traits that often gets overlooked because it's so simple. But if you pay attention to the people everyone likes to be around, or those who really influence a room, time after time you'll find they bring a quality of full, undistracted attention to each moment. It's not about being loud or commanding, but it's about making whoever they're with feel like the center of the universe for however long they're together. Most people nowadays know what it's like to have a conversation where someone is half there. The other person checks their phone, seems distracted by the TV, glances over your shoulder when someone else walks in, or rushes you through whatever you're saying. Even when it's not meant to be rude, it makes an impact. You start feeling like you're boring, or like what you're saying doesn't matter. On the other hand, when someone puts their phone down, looks you in the eye, and really tunes in, the entire energy of the moment changes. It doesn't actually take hours to make a person feel respected and seen. Sometimes, even just a few focused minutes is enough to make a surprising difference. Purposeful presence is basically giving your undivided attention to whoever or whatever's in front of you. It might be a single conversation at dinner, a focused moment helping your kid with homework, or even just participating fully during a one-hour work meeting. You aren't multitasking, rehearsing your response while somebody else is talking, or daydreaming about something 3 hours away. You are 100% in the conversation. This isn't just good manners. It stands out because almost everything in society now is designed to distract us. Phones, emails, push notifications, streaming, these all eat away at true, mindful connection. One of the best ways to start bringing more purposeful presence into your daily life is simply to notice all those little urges to check out mentally, to escape the moment. Maybe you're standing in line and your brain starts wandering to tomorrow's to-do list, or you're in a conversation that's dragging and you have to resist the automatic urge to pull out your phone. Everyone is tempted by this. The first step is realizing how automatic it is, and then gently pulling your focus back to where you are. This gets easier with a bit of practice. Being fully present doesn't mean you have to be excited or entertained every moment. Sometimes it's about tolerating a bit of boredom or awkwardness to show respect and care. If you're attending a meeting and your colleague is presenting, giving your attention to them, even if the topic isn't your favorite, shows real integrity and makes them more likely to do the same for you. When people feel heard and acknowledged, even for 5 or 10 minutes, they open up and are more willing to share their best ideas or be vulnerable. In family life, this presence has its own kind of magic. Picture how children light up when an adult gets down on their level and truly listens, or how a partner feels when you pause to let them finish talking even after a long day. It's hard to overstate the impact of these small moments of connection. Over the course of a week or a month, they add up to an atmosphere where people feel deeply valued, even when there's little time or lots of stress. Friends notice purposeful presence too. When you catch up over coffee and genuinely listen, ask real questions, and keep your attention off your phone, it creates a sense that you really care about their life. Not just the headlines, but the day-to-day stuff. These are the conversations people remember years later. It's not about making every hangout session some deep heart-to-heart. Often just being all there for silly or ordinary topics is enough to show that your friendship matters. In work environments, purposeful presence can define people's reputations. Think about the co-workers who seem like glue. They quietly help teams hold together, partly because they listen during discussions, pick up non-verbal cues, and notice what's really going on beneath the surface. Their questions are more thoughtful, and their responses more considered, because they absorbed what was happening instead of rushing ahead. Over time, these are the people trusted as sounding boards or included in important projects, not because they have the loudest voice, but because they're tuned in. It's hard to avoid distractions all the time, especially now. Purposeful presence doesn't mean perfection. If you catch yourself zoning out during a conversation or sneaking a look at your email, that's normal. What helps the most is a quick reset when you notice you've left the moment. You can apologize if needed or just bring your focus back. People are incredibly forgiving, as long as they know you're making an effort to come back to them instead of staying checked out. The benefits of this kind of presence aren't just for others either. Being fully engaged where you are can lower stress and anxiety. When you're not constantly pulled in 2 or 3 directions, your nervous system has a chance to settle. Many people actually feel more accomplished at the end of the day when they've spent their time truly present in just a handful of moments, instead of stretched thin while multitasking for hours. A great trick for building your purposeful presence is to turn routine moments into opportunities for practice. When you sit down for a meal, leave your phone in another room. If you're in a meeting, shut down distracting tabs or notifications. Make eye contact with cashiers or bus drivers, give your full attention when someone shares good or bad news, and let yourself stay in conversations instead of escaping into your own thoughts or phone. You don't have to tackle every interaction every day, but small wins add up. There are also bigger, more intentional ways you can set the stage for being present. At home, maybe you create a no-phone zone at dinner or during afternoon play with your kids. In friendships, you suggest walks or meetups where tech is away and nobody rushes off. In romantic relationships, designating just a half-hour a week for undistracted talking, even if it's about little things, can feel huge. In the end, the habit becomes part of your reputation. People know you as reliable, attentive, and enjoyable company. Purposeful presence becomes a kind of social investment. When you're giving your attention, the person or task in front of you feels prioritized. If you make this a routine, people will let their guard down, trust you more, and be more likely to share honestly. Even in tricky conversations or conflicts, staying present can keep things grounded and help everyone feel like they're on the same team, even when working through disagreements. Distraction doesn't always come from gadgets or screens. It can come from emotional noise too. You might be caught up in your own worries, assumptions, or judgments while someone is talking. Practicing presence means noticing those inner reactions, then choosing to focus on what's in front of you, not on what you're preparing to say next. Real listening can't happen when you're readying your own reply in your head. People pick up on the difference and tend to be more open and responsive when they notice you're really tuned in. Sometimes purposeful presence means saying no so you can give your full attention to what really matters. If you're overbooked, stretched thin, or trying to do everything at once, nobody gets your best. Choosing to focus on fewer things makes your presence stronger wherever you actually are. This doesn't mean shutting out the world, but it does mean making space, sometimes by setting clear boundaries, declining a few extra invitations, or taking breaks from digital overload. And if you're worried about missing out or losing connection by being less available online or less responsive to every update, take a look at your own best memories. Most likely, they don't come from a marathon scrolling session, but from a handful of real-life, fully engaged moments. Whether it was a meaningful conversation, a shared laugh, or a time when someone made you feel important, those memories stand out precisely because someone was truly present, either you for them or them for you. Purposeful presence also gives you an anchor during stressful times. When things get busy or complicated, it's grounding to focus just on what you can control right now. The single person you're supporting, the one project you're tackling, the meal you're sharing. If you can't solve everything or be everywhere, you can still make a difference by being 100% where your feet are. Even on the busiest days, that kind of groundedness calms everyone around you. Being present doesn't mean always being on or productive. Sometimes it's about rest, reflection, or simply letting a moment wash over you without resistance. If you're having dinner with friends, let yourself enjoy the meal instead of worrying about tomorrow's plans or documenting every bite for social media. If you're on a walk, pay attention to the sounds, sights, and your own breath instead of racing to the end. These habits make ordinary life feel richer, and people who regularly practice presence find they notice more joy, creativity, and peace. When you make presence part of your daily reputation, people start to act differently around you. They feel safer, more relaxed, and more trusting. You'll find that others will confide in you more, ask for advice, or seek out your company during both good and hard times. You might become someone's safe person, the one they call when they actually need to process real life, not just the highlight reel. This doesn't mean you have to fix everything or offer profound wisdom. Just being truly there is sometimes more powerful than any fix. It also helps you build resilience. The more present you are for difficult emotions or tough conversations, the less likely you are to react impulsively or run from discomfort. Being present with someone's sadness, anger, or confusion shows trust and support. You can say things like, "I'm here," or "take your time," letting the other person lead the pace and content of the conversation. That patience is remembered long after any advice or solution you might offer. In team or group settings, presence enables deeper collaboration. Meetings that feel like everyone's checked out can shift when just one person is fully engaged and receptive. You'll pick up on objections or enthusiasm others are missing, and you'll notice who feels left out or overwhelmed. This sensitivity helps teams adapt, make smarter decisions, and keep morale up, even when things get complicated. Presence isn't about being serious all the time, though. Sometimes it's about bringing playful energy, laughter, or lightness because you're actually tuned into the moment. When you're not distracted, you can catch jokes, share smiles, and tap into the contagious energy of a group. Joy and humor are both easier and more authentic when you're connected to what's happening, not lost in thought or off in your own world. When it comes to technology, figure out where your own boundaries need to be for truly purposeful presence. Maybe you set your phone to Do Not Disturb during key conversations, or you limit how much time you spend in group chats per day. Review who and what actually deserves your best focus and organize your time accordingly. If someone asks you to listen, do your best to give them a pocket of presence even if it's just 5 minutes. It leaves a lasting impression. Purposeful presence also helps resolve conflicts faster. Instead of throwing out quick fixes or defensive retorts, you focus fully on what the other person's saying and let yourself process before coming up with a response. This extra attention and patience often lead to more lasting solutions and help avoid the same problems again and again. If you're a leader, parent, or mentor, your ability to offer real presence is what makes you inspiring and trustworthy. People remember less about what advice you shared and more about how you made them feel, whether you were really invested in them, even just for a short time. Years later, your presence and support will likely stand out more than any particular tip or clever line you offered. Building this habit isn't about perfection or renouncing convenience, but it does take honest effort and self-awareness. Start by boosting just 1 or 2 moments per day, a meal, a short conversation, a check-in call. Challenge yourself to give the person in front of you your full attention, no matter how briefly. You'll quickly see that people stop to smile more, open up more, and respond more warmly when they feel that you're really with them. Even for yourself, being present deepens your experience of life, helps you handle setbacks with more calm, and brings out the best in others. You don't have to be everywhere or do everything, but where you choose to show up, you matter. That's presence. Real, simple, and unforgettable. It's the thread that runs through strong relationships, effective teamwork, and rich memories, reminding us that the best parts of life usually have nothing to do with impressing people and everything to do with really showing up for each other, one moment at a time.